Hello, everybody. Welcome to ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa. Mahalo for joining us tonight. We have an exciting program. We're going to give everybody just a few more minutes to log in, and then we will get started.
Meanwhile, we'd love to know where you're tuning in from, what island, where you're calling in from. Let us let the presenters know who's watching, and we'll get started soon. As soon as we allow a little bit more time for people to enter the room. Hilo.
Hey, Nona.
Maui, Molokai, Eva Beach, Aiea, Kailua, Aloha Nui Kako, Ko'olaupoko, Volcano, Beaverton, Oregon, Michigan.
Aloha, New York.
Aloha nui kako, and welcome to a new season with ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa. We've got a new season of offering, sharing, and teaching. This is a new webinar series celebrating the intergenerational mana of Wahine. I'm Kim Ku'ule Bernie. I'm a member of the all-volunteer Hui of Wahine that represents multiple generations that put our energy into ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa. This new season is presented with the support of many entities, and we mahalo them all. Hawaii People's Fund, Oiwi Television, E Kolumea Nui, Papaʻolelo Kahi, Windward Community College, the Roots Program at Kokua Kalihi Valley, Ko'olau Aina Momona with Maili Kukahi, and mahalo nui for your support. Just a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and live streamed, and you can watch it later on our website at ʻahawahine.org. Throughout the program, questions and answers may be put in the panel at the bottom, or if you're watching via Facebook, in the comments section. An evaluation will be sent at the close of the webinar. So without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and another Wahine, Ka'iolani Odom, to introduce tonight's program. Mahalo.
Aloha, everybody. Welcome. We're so excited about our new season. And we're especially excited about tonight with our two presenters. We have Mikiʻala Pescaia and Kaʻanohiokalā Kalama-Macomber. Mikiʻala comes from the homestead Ho'olekua a Molokai. She has 11 children with her husband and is a kahu of Moʻolelo for her ohana and mokopuni. Mikiʻala is also family to me. Her sister Kuipo is married to my son Kaipole Manu. But the most impressive memory that I have of Miki is when we took our ʻehuola keiki up to Molokai, and she spent the entire day with us, and she told them stories all throughout the day, different mo'olelo of Molokai. And you know that they talked about those stories our whole trip. They reenacted them, they talked about them. And I had known Mikiʻala as Kuipa's sister, but I didn't realize what just an amazing, amazing storyteller she was. Then we also have Kaʻanohi Kalama-Macomber, and she is from Koʻolapoko, Oahu. She's a daughter, a mother, a community member, and a keeper for family legacy of hula. I first met Kaʻanohi when her son and my grandson were in Punana together. And I was always impressed. I watched her, throughout the years, and just always really impressed at how much she cultivated culture within her children, that foundation of culture within her children. And she comes from a long line of respected kumuhula. Her grandmother, Auntie Nana Kalama, and her mother, Charlene, are very well known in the windward side of and Kailua, where we're both from. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to them. And they have so much to share, but we just want to mahalo them for being with us tonight and for the all of their stories that they're going to tell. And so we're going to let them start off by each talking about their kuleana to the mo'olelo and to preserving what's in their family, what's in their culture, where they're from. And so Mikiʻala and Kaʻanohi, mahalo nui.
Aloha. Rerehi mo ka pui o nā lei ulua hulu ana I ke ala lipoa. E ala mai e nā hoa o ka lewa. Nā manuo ka, nā manuo kai. Nā oa I o ahi o nā wahine. I ka ai hawane. I ka lau holu nape. Ki ka hakia manu lele ko wae. I ka pae kalawa o vai hae. I ka hali ia veo papa. Papa ole ia ke ala kupono. Wahiki pono mai ano ai Helina Mayana Hoa, Kalamai, I'm so ha'alulu. I don't know why. I think I can talk to all kinds of groups of people, but then you put me in a room full of amazing titas and wahine, and now I'm super intimidated, as if we all in the same room together for real kind. I feel all of your aloha and all your mana just like Care Bear stare beaming through the waves at me, and it's just really overwhelming and fills my heart with aloha. I started with an oli that was written for my latest, the latest addition to our family. We have my husband and I have a 6-month-old baby. And she was named her name is Kia Manu. And it's, I grew up at my grandmother's feet. Her name was Harriet Ahiona Ayao Ne. Well-known storyteller on Molokai. She took her place among many other like solid kupuna wahine who were always the historians and the history keepers for our island. And being privileged to be at her feet, I got to hear some stories over and over and over again and enjoyed spending that time with her. I was her ukali. I would carry her Bible and make sure her cane and her water everywhere she went, and made sure that she was comfortable and safe. But it also allowed me this sort of backstage pass to all these amazing conversations she'd have. And she always made it a point that we would know our island. She would always say Molokai is only 32 miles long, 11 miles wide at the point of Kalaupapa. We're not that big. And so it is our kuleana to know every inch of this aina and to know all the history. And she says, you have a lifetime to learn it. So that's pretty much what I've done. Not just embracing my tutu stories and my own ohana stories, but the stories that were passed down from other lines. And it's really like this honor and privilege to pull all of those mo'olelo together so that I deepen my understanding and pilina to Molokai and to this aina, as aina momona, Molokai nui ahina, which we're going to get into a little later. But Kia Manu, my daughter's name, she's, there's a nice picture of my grandma here. One of my favorite stories that or things about my ohana that I'm really proud of is that she was born and raised in Pelekunu Valley on the backside of Molokai. And it's a very narrow valley. And they used to go holo holo up Mauka and pick things up in the forest, or they would go holo holo in the stream and catch o'opu and hihiwai. And when it was ready, they would pick lolu palm leaves and they would use it to hand glide back down to shore. And there's all these mo'olelo of the kupuna, the backside of Molokai, being able to hand glide or fly. And all my life, like I've had so many skeptics come up to me and sort of question the validity of such a claim. And I attribute that to being able to sit in one place and make observations and study the makani and the manu and reconnect in those ways to the elements. And by observing how the birds are behaving, they were able to mimic these things. And so that was like no problem. My grandma was young. She was only 4 years old. She remembers flying or gliding from Mokapu Island all the way to Kalawao, which is a couple miles, maybe almost 1.5 miles or 2 miles wide, that jump. And I always think one day I hope I'm brave enough to take a leap of faith in such ways. And today I get to reconnect. I do a lot of work with birds, and now I work in Kalama-Macomber, and I get to look at Pelekunu Valley all the time and think of my grandma and her grandma that raised her. Her grandma's name was Lu'ukiaholau, and she was a athletic trainer and a medicine woman. And so we have all these other mo'olelo that come down. And today I see so much of what the intentional stories that were told and shared with me, really finding a place and a purpose in my life today. And that's a privilege. And so I always aspire to be the kupuna my mo'opuna deserves. So together, my husband and I have 11 keiki that we were raising, not pau yet. And we have 11 mo'opuna, one on the way, any day now. And that's exciting because I strive to be the kind of kupuna my tutu was to me. And I know Kaʻanohi, my dear friend, feels the same way about her tutu. Kaʻanohi.
Mahalo nui a oe ke hoa. Mahalo ia o kou kekahi no ke konona mai ia'u I ke ia papahana kuikawa, kia papahana piha me na wahine kuikawa no hawaii. Aloha kākou. Mahalo ia oe e Mikiʻala no ke la leo oli, no ke la leo piha me ke aloha, no ke la leo mo'oku auhau no ko ohana. Yeah. Aloha everybody. Mahalo so much for having me here, and I'm just honored to be able to be in this space with all of you and to be able to share a little bit of a glimpse into the mo'olelo that really helped to shape us into the people that you see sitting in front of you today. Much like Mikiʻala, our stories are very similar. I too was that ukali for my tutu wahine. My grandmother on my mother's side, Elizabeth Kekauʻilani Ka'ai Kavaha Kalama, was a master kumuhula, the first graduate kumuhula from Lokalia Montgomery, whose kuleana it was to truly carry on the traditions and the legacies and be that resource for anybody in need. And so I look to her, as well as my mother, who it got passed down to, and then to myself. I look to them as exemplars of the type of wahine that I would like to be in this world today. And that's really somebody who is not going to be quick to take the credit, but no matter what, you know they're there for you whenever you need them, yeah? Mo'olelo for me came at a very young age. Well, my passion for mo'olelo came at a very young age. And it really is all circled around hula. And so my ohana is a very strong hula and kai ohana. And our ties and many of our mo'olelo are really grounded in those two spaces. But for me, the hula was really what ignited that passion of wanting to seek out mo'olelo because of the way that my tutu wahine shared mo'olelo with me. And like Mikiʻala said, mo'olelo, there's intentionality behind the sharing of mo'olelo. And so to be that mo'o, to be that little mo'opuna sitting at the feet of her tutu as she went to class, as she went to travel and share here, there, and everywhere. And as she welcomed people from all walks of life into our home, I was privileged to be able to not only hear her stories, but to be invited into theirs as well. And the people that came through our home, you could never imagine just the list of A-listers right nowadays that are in all kind of books, and to be trusted enough to sit in that space and just listen. One of the biggest lessons that she taught me is to just sit and listen. Don't always have to be the first person to talk. You don't always have to be the first person to figure it all out. Just sit and listen, because when you do that, your answers will come, right? And so, you know, there are so many different mo'olelo shared through hula. One of my favorites though, and I think one of the ones that really ignited my passion, I know I said that already, but that really ignited my passion for wanting to iminoi, to go and do research, to ask questions, to put myself in front of people whose mo'olelo I was really interested in hearing, is that of an oli, of an oli that my tutu composed. And it was after one of her travels up the Old Pali Road to go and pick up my auntie, and the words that were chosen were so intricately and meticulously chosen to describe a very, very specific experience, to where as we chant it and as you dance it and as you feel the drum beats, you are immediately transported into that space, right? And so her ability to weave hua'olelo together to allow anybody, whether you were alive during that time or not, to really feel like they're a part of that story was just so beautiful. You know, phrases like kahe kahe na kahavai o o, right? Describing just the gushing and the thrashing down of the vailele down Pali across her car, almost pushing her car off the cliff, and just that visual, you feel it, it's in you. And so through those oli, through mele, through mo'olelo of ohana, mo'olelo of history, of lahui, of Hawaii, I really realized that that's the gift that I want to continue to give. And so I do that with my keiki, as Kaʻilani said, with my ohana and with our halau, and in any space that I can. But always interested in hearing more mo'olelo and continuing to build on that.
Yeah, my tutu kind of did the same thing too. So in Pelekunu, my grandma was always like a little bit different than all the rest of the other wahine or the other kaika wahine, and she too wound up in a hula tradition. And she in Pelekunu, the halau there was only the men danced, and her uncle's name was Kawowo, and she memorized the oli kahea. And one day she was standing, because she said, I didn't learn for dance. And they said, no, you cannot. This is only for kane. And she's like, well, how come we no more wahine kain over here? And they said, because that's just how. And so she, one day she was standing outside, and they were listening, and they could hear somebody else chanting and sounded like Wankane, and they was all trying to figure out who that was. And when they came out, she was only 6 years old, and she was imitating the leokane with her oli, and was welcomed into that halau. And that's how she learned the ku'i. Some of the ku'i that came out of Molokai, that's she kind of went. Anyways, I think that's where I get them from. Like I always crossing gender lines, and I know people get irritated with me because, you know, in the old days had all these kapu, like, and I understand the kapu. I understand the reasoning why and the way our society was organized. But there were times where, I guess like in my grandma's time, things were changing, it was shifting, and it was in the name of preservation or in the name of making sure certain mana remained intact. And mo'olelo is mana. Yeah, it is our identity. It tells us who we are, where we came from, who we want to be, what we aspire to fulfill and continue. And it really sets the path. And so, you know, there's one particular hula that she composed, because you just trigger me about, oh yeah, our tutus not just telling us mo'olelo, like we go to these different places, but actually through hula and oli, that's another way we preserve all of this information, right? Imitating the sounds and imitating the motions. That was the TikToks of 100 years ago. Like they did everything for record this information so that we could get one as real of an experience as possible, right? But kind of going back to my Kia Manu, thought she wrote a chant about because her uncles were all Kia Manu. They were all bird protectors and feather gatherers. And then, you know, the fashion trend of Ahu'ula went to, you know, the East Coast and to Europe, and all these people came back and they were harvesting all of the birds, but they weren't practicing conservation and sustainability the way our kupuna were doing it. And so people just rolled up with their guns and started shooting all the birds in the valley, and they actually ended up wiping out the entire population in Pelekunu. And so there's a chant that my grandma composed, and it's the lament of the Kia Manu, and how the process of us losing touch with this tradition, that art went away because the birds went away. And how do we remember the compromise, like how do we let that happen to us, right? And not let that happen. And so the kanikau, it's a kanikau for the bird catchers and for the birds. And you know, my grandma taught all these people and went outside of my family, but it's just right, like the people she taught, they taught other people and taught other people. And long story short, a couple years ago, somebody came back and said, "Hey, I know this mo'oku'auhau, this mele is from your grandma." And I was like, wow, that's so crazy, because I've only seen a recording done in the 80s at BYU. And they said, "I want to give this back to your ohana." And so they taught it to my sons. And so to see my sons and my husband come back and dance the same mele that my tutu, anyways, it's just chicken skin. Also, like that feeling of how these mo'olelo sometimes, like we only can malama so much, but through the sharing and the retelling, you never know. I think it's not lost. It's out there somewhere, and it might find its way back to you. So I think for all the people listening out there, like sometimes you might be sitting there and going like, I don't know, like my grandma never tell me anything. I don't even know where she's still, what happened, you know. No give up. Like the mo'olelo is still out there. We just got to keep having these kinds of talk stories and making connections, and the mo'olelo going to find its way back to you. So one other kind of neat thing that my grandma had was this pillow, and her grand aunt was an ukali to Queen Liliuokalani when she was imprisoned. And you see some of their quilt work on display in the palace. But we had one pillow in my ohana that was made up of all these little patchwork pieces of fabric, and we have an answer key that was like green silk brocade, and it told the dress, the style of the dress, and the event that Lili'u wore it to. And it was this amazing, beautiful pillow, all hand stitched together. We had all this mo'olelo of history of that time, like who are these like state dinners, you know, and VIPs and all these special people that came from all over the world to come and meet with our queen. And that pillow, though, somebody took it. So this is my kaha out to the universe, because I have a suspicion of who took that pillow. But it went missing. And I hope that one day that pillow come back to our ohana. For now, we just have the mo'olelo. And I know Kaʻanohi, your ohana too, yeah, you guys have it. So that's like, a lot of our stories are connected to Lili'u, but Kaʻanohi she get love for not a queen. Who's your queen, girl? Who's your queen that you got your ohana get pilina to?
No, I have aloha for them all. But you know, Mikiʻala, you said a couple of things, and one of the biggest things that we need to always remember is mo'olelo is about preservation, right? But that doesn't mean being stuck in the past, but preserving a particular perspective at a particular time in history in order to inform how we build on that and how we continue to kui that lei, right? And add to the mo'olelo. And my kupuna wahine always said, "A'ohe pau ka ike i ka halau ho'okahi." And many people can literally say all knowledge does not come from one school, that you don't know everything, all those different kinds of things. But her perception of it was really that we're not going to learn everything we need to learn from one place, right? Everything we need to learn in life from one place. But it's our kuleana to build first a firm foundation and then trust the people that we have in our lives to kind of farm us out to those that they feel hold the mo'olelo that can continue to add to our lei, right? In the most purposeful of ways. And so, so when we talk about, you know, when you talk about losing that pillow, but still having the mo'olelo, all of those things are really important, right? And how are we holding on to the stories and continuing to share them? Because one day somebody will hear it and they'll be able to find some sort of pilina to the mo'olelo you're sharing, and they're going to come back and they're going to add to it, right? And so many times that's happened for me with my tutu, with my mom, with my grandfather. Oh my goodness, if this was about kolohe men and jacks of all trades, that's a whole other talk. Yeah, Charles Kalama, get him on here. But you know, all of those stories. And so another, you know, when we talk about preservation and getting all of the different perspectives, Lili'u Kalani, definitely there's a lot of mo'olelo with my ohana and Lili'u and my tutu and the chants that she's done in honor of her. But the one that we really carry through our hula line is Queen Emma. And really it's because there's a personal connection between my tutu and Queen Emma, one where they weren't alive in the same time together. However, that spiritual connection to having very similar stories. Yeah, we all know that Queen Emma in a year's time lost both her husband and her son, and just all of the ʻeha that comes with that. But leading up to that and even after that, that didn't change the type of wahine that she was for her lahui, for the kaiaulu, for Hawaiʻine, yeah. And that was really a wahine of great resilience, great humble strength, and you know, kalani ha'a for sure, right? And kalani loko mai kai, giving, with the primary concern being to care, protect, and preserve her people. And my grandmother emulates that so very much, emulated that in everything she did with us and continues to do that as she is in the realm of Po with all of her ancestors. One of the connections there is my grandmother and my grandfather had 11 children. Their youngest daughter, Hoakalei, passed away at the age of 2 from leukemia at a time where they didn't really know how to handle it, right? And so if you look at the stories of Emma and Kahakua Hawaii, Prince Albert, and then my grandmother and Auntie Huakalei, very similar times, didn't know what to do, didn't know what choices to make, but had to make the best out of it, right? Had other people to tend to, had other kuleana to tend to. So how do we bear down and dig deep and truly practice ahonui and know that no matter what ends up happening, it is what is meant to be. And so coming out of that, really just these pictures of resilience, right? And these pictures of wahine who, no matter what, it may crack their spirit just a little bit, but they're going to continue to trek on. They're going to continue to push. They're going to continue to persevere and be there in the best way possible, you know. And so one of my favorite mo'olelo of Queen Emma that my tutu shared and has passed on, and we continue to pass on, is of her travels up in Koke'e, and particularly her travel to Alakai. And so if you read the books, they talk about how she takes this whole entourage up Koke'e, and they're traveling by horseback, and plenty of people, over 100 people going with her. But they don't tell all of the details that we heard, right? And of course, many different sides to the story. But the ones that stand out the most for me are the multiple stops that Queen Emma made to just sit and embrace the space with hula and oli. And some people were like, oh, we gotta go, nightfall's coming. No. I feel the need right now for us to sit for 2 hours and just hula and oli because it's calling to me, right? And my tutu did the same. There's talk of, you know, some people in the hula world know about my tutu and Iolani Luahine and the visits that Iolani would make to their house in Kailua when my mother and her siblings were really young, and how she and Iolani would go to the mouth of the river at Kailua, at Ka'elepulu, and dance until the sun came up. Yeah, from the wee hours in the night all the way till the sun came up. And there's those mo'olelo and dancing just because they're called to do the dance, right? But many don't know that she didn't only do that there with Iolani Luahine. She did it at Halima'uma'u, you know, all over the place, right? There were moments where you go on these travels with her, and much like kupuna of today, we got to just let them lead and just stop when they say stop, go when they say go, right? And sitting there channeling all of the power that is around us, all of the natural elements that are around us, to continue to just push forward and offer the leo, offer the hula, offer the beats. And so Queen Emma's travels up Koke'e, she did the same. And when they got to Alakai, which plain people call it a swamp now, it's characterized as Alakai Swamp, but really it's just this beautiful area, described as this really beautiful area that is just very, very spiritually sound and beautiful and pristine. And when they got there, they got to a section where they pretty much needed to walk through some water, some deep water, and they might not have made it, right? Needed to climb on logs and all of that. And the way the mo'olelo was shared with me is that they offered to carry Emma across Alakai, right? This is after they trekked all the way from town into Waimea, up Koke'e, right, on those horses. And Emma stops and she says, no, I'm going to walk with my people. If anything needs to be carried, you carry my horses. They're tired, right? And so when you hear that and you think about just the sacrifices that we make as mama, as keiki, as hoa, you know, as alakai, as kanakahai, you know, the sacrifices we make to do what's best for the whole is really the examples that we continue to carry on, right? That passion for people, that passion for aloha in its truest form. That aloha is sometimes hard. Aloha is not always pretty, but when we're doing it for the right reasons at the right time, in the right way, connected and tethered to the right mo'olelo, it will come out the way it needs to come out. Yeah, and so my tutu, for us now in today's time, we continue to carry that story and continue to honor Emma for her love of Emma and all that Emma stood for, as well as for our love of her and all that she exemplified in everything that she was. And so, you know, when we talk about, Mikiʻala and I both talked about the preservation of mo'olelo and these ali'i and the many different stories that can come and needing to wait and sit for stories, we often ask ourselves, so what do we do if the mo'olelo don't come? Or what do we do if we're only reading the book? Like she and I are talking about sitting at people's feet and hearing the mo'olelo directly. Is that any different from the mo'olelo that we read? Is that any different from the mo'olelo that we have access to today? Today, you can go on Google and just pick it up and read whatever, yeah? And we don't know if it's true. We don't know where it comes from. And so my tutu always said, you know, take it all in, but know your kahua enough to know what to sift out, yeah, what to let go of and what to truly hold on to. And so for me, mo'olelo of my ohana, mo'olelo of hula, mo'olelo of queens like Emma, mo'olelo of Akua, like Papa, Hina, Laka, all of that are the foundations that I tether to. And yeah, I know Mikiʻala has some pretty cool mo'olelo about Hina that maybe she wants to share now before we run out of time. So I'm gonna volley it back to you.
I know. Girl, this hola is just going swiftly by, yeah. Well, okay, so I was thinking about versions of mo'olelo. So my grandma had she used to get interviewed, and her mo'olelo used to be published in a local newspaper. People have come and interviewed her. And then this other lady came, I think she was from BYU, and she went to interview my grandma and went publish this book of a whole bunch of mo'olelo. And when I read the book, or when I used to read the mo'olelo, I used to like start very clear difference between the version we would hear in person and the version that was in the book. And I used to think, like, is she just getting old? Is she giving us the wrong scoops? Like she forget or what? But then I hear her tell them again, and the thing is a little bit different. And then I hear her tell you, and the thing is a little bit different. And what I learned was, no give away everything to everybody. Some things is just for you. Some things is just for us. When you make it noa or you print it, it stops. It sort of freezes, yeah. It stops evolving. It stops morphing. And when you think of some of our classic mo'olelo, yeah, and they're retold through time, like Pele mo'olelo, right? You read them in a newspaper. How come all these different people get slightly different versions? Hey, you can go to one whole other part of the Pacific and get Pele mo'olelo, you know, and it's a little different, or Maui mo'olelo, and Hina and Papa is versions, and which one is right? They're all right. I tell people all versions is polole. It's the one that and brings me to you and your life. But something is, I asked my grandma, like, oh, how come in our version, like all those people went die, and then you tell like, everybody lived happily ever after? And she's like, because that's the ending they like here. But if you like know the truth, this is what would happen. And I used to I think about now our kuleana and responsibility to information. Now everything is noa. People just put all kinds of stuff out on the internet, all kind of personal information. Other people putting your personal information out there, and once you put it out, you cannot take them back. And I was like, that's just our kupuna thought the exact same way with their ha. Yeah, once in Olelo, once you spoke it, it was as if you put it on the internet. It's living forever. They already understood that concept, and the kuleana that comes with it. One other thing that I get asked a lot is it molokai or molokai? And you know, so it's been published. My grandma's mana'o of why she says molokai. She doesn't ever say, don't say molokai. She doesn't say molokai is wrong, or she doesn't, put anybody that she puts out mana'o. And we kind of get misinterpreted that way sometimes. Like being pro-Hawaiian is not anti anything else. We're just pro one thing. Yeah, or we are perpetuating one thing. But that doesn't mean nothing else has mana. It's that's everybody else's kuleana to pai your own mo'olelo then. So when I give my version, I'm not saying that everybody else's version is wrong. And just for the record, it's molokai and molokai. It depends on the mood, the context, and the mana we like evoke. You like us kai, we will show up and kai, no worry. We'll take charge, but we're just trying to give everybody else chance. So we just like go with the flow and nalu and molo with the kai and let other people join along with us. But when it's time to kai, I think my island is pretty good at busting out the kai. And maybe that has to do with us being Molokai Nui Ahina, yeah. Like people forget that Hina is the Ara woman. Like, yeah, Papa and Wakia. And then, you know, next thing you know, there's another woman on the scene. And so we kind of, we're the Ara kid, really. Like, I mean, there's a few of us, you know, in this Pai'aina that are just, we're the other kids. And so the dynamic, even like, I think it comes through in our mo'olelo, like how mo'olelo are recorded and the versions. It's just like when I look, my husband and I have a blended family. He has children from before, I have children from before, we get kiki together. So of course, like when something goes down, everybody has a little bit different background and different perspective. And so kind of that same thing when we get together with the cousins and yeah, we're like, what? Grandma never tell me that. And like, how come? Well, she told me, you know, we feel privileged to have the scoops, right? Anyways, I was just thinking about that, like even, so, you know, the mo'olelo come from our mo'oku'auhau, from our ohana, the ones we acquire from other sources, the ones that are forever alive and just, you know, morphing and growing on our lehelehe, and then the ones that were recorded and preserved because we needed to lock it into a certain time. Like, I'm so thankful Lili'u took the time to document the things that she documented, because that gave us a very firm framework, yeah? And you know exactly when, like, you can go back in history and try to put yourself in that era to understand what was she thinking, what was she feeling, what was the love we experiencing at the time that these mo'olelo were even captured, what was the sentiment, and even all of that like is rich. Yeah, some of these mo'olelo, we hear it today and it has a mana, you know, a relevance. Yeah, it's pili to us, Ikia manava. But you can also, like, you read them again, but imagine yourself sitting in Waikiki in the lo'i without buildings. Read that mo'olelo again. How do you feel? You know, take yourself back to all these places before development, before outside influence, you know, and when you start connecting to the richness of the descriptions, yeah, the just the vocabulary, the words that are chosen. Why that one and not this one? There's so many ways to say something is beautiful. Oh, they took 10 pauku for tell us how nani that was. Like, you know, even those kinds of details in mo'olelo, you know, sometimes we're over there like, yeah, okay, like get to the good part. Yeah. You're like trying to tell us like all the little nitty gritties. I don't know, it just made me think of when I to Auntie Clara Koo, every time she pull it for like every little thing, like down to the knife that when cut the tomato for the lomi salmon and the vine and the whatever, you know, it's like every little thing was worth mentioning. And when you, I don't know, I delight in the details. And today we're so, we like the quick version. We like the, we fast forward with the remote, yeah, and we skip over, and we like the, we just consume a lot of information, and we don't take the time to actually enjoy. So I extend an invitation to anybody when you get a chance and you like come Molokai and you like just hang out and nanea and take time for actually hear mo'olelo in these slow ways. Come visit me. I would tell you go check out my friend Kaʻanohi too, but I don't like just put more things on her plate. But I stood in places where I wish I had more time because I got a really cool mo'olelo. My grandma told me about this one pohaku, but it's super, super powerful, this mo'olelo. But the point is that years later, somebody came and bulldozed that rock and disappeared. And along, you know, again, it's like the pillow, lilo, yeah? What the point, like the secondary point to the storytelling is we have to keep the mo'olelo alive so that we know why these places are special and we can malama properly. The guy who bulldozed them, he never even knows was a special rock. But that thing was so like significant and like there's a very detailed mo'olelo attached to it. He never know any better. And now he feel bad about that for the rest of his life, you know, and some things we just cannot get back. Some things we can. And so that's our kuleana, to go out, not just talk about them, but if you get the chance, go to those places. Yeah. Go stand in alaka'i and like smell that and feel it and just, you know, like be immersed in it. And all these mo'olelo will come alive. We're running out of time, Yati. Shucks.
Yeah. No, kako'o I ke la mana'o, being able to sit in spaces and feel mo'olelo and share mo'olelo. So, you know, I second Miki'ala's kono ya oko whakahiapau to the lehu on the World Wide Web, whoever's watching this, whoever gets to see this many years from now. If I'm still alive and I'm still around when you see it, by all means, come knock on the door and I'd be more than happy, or send a carrier pigeon message, whatever. I'll meet you down at the shores of Kailua and we can talk story until the sun comes up again. Miki'ala, you know, made a really great point about once our mo'olelo are spoken into the air, right? You know, there's a lot of stories about why you don't do certain things at night, why you don't do certain things in the daytime, and the proper time and place for certain hana Hawaii, right? And one of the biggest ones is because once we let it go into the air, like Miki'ala said, it's no, but not only that, the kepalo can take it, right? As my tutu would say, like those spirits and entities, whatever you believe in, that energy that is not ideal or not what you want in that moment can take it and do something completely different with it. And so being really purposeful about when you tell those mo'olelo, who you tell those mo'olelo to, what you allow to be recorded, what you don't allow to be recorded. I think that was one of the traits that my tutu wahine really held true to. And to this day, my mom continues to do it and I continue to do it. And so, you know, if you ask our haumana and halau about the way that we share and we do hula, they'll tell you the exact same thing. And it really comes from understanding that mo'olelo is a gift when it's being shared with you. And so you want to make sure that the people receiving it have the best intentions at heart, but also that they understand what to do with it next, right? Miki'ala also talked about the many different variations of the stories and the interpretations and how none of them are wrong. They're just different perspectives. And so you got to figure out what your kahua is and how it's relevant in your life. That's not to say that you go make anything up and you say, oh, they told me I was right, right? You still need to be able to verify it across generations, okay? But unless it's your own mo'olelo that you're creating. But, you know, we talk for hula, a lot of people talk about laka, and there are many variations of laka, right? There's laka as a kane, laka as a wahine, laka from pele, laka from la'ila'i, laka as the birther of hula, laka as the learner of hula from kapo, right? There's all different variations of that. But the commonality between all of those stories is laka is a preservationist. Laka is somebody who perpetuates, is an entity that reminds us to continue to perpetuate. Laka is that spirit that breathes life into things, right? And so when we look at laka through hula, laka is the movement of our bodies that allows us to feel the drum beats, that allows us to feel our spaces. It's the energy and the nature around us. And that's consistent in any mo'olelo you see about laka. It's consistent, right? And so when you hear the multiple mo'olelo and you're asking yourself, which one do I believe? Find that common thread, because there's gonna be a common thread. There's gonna be something that connects every single one of those mo'olelo that you're hearing. That is the main purpose for the mo'olelo, right? That is why it's being told. All the other stuff is just fluff, right? All the other stuff is details that make it ono, that make you wanna sit and continue to listen. But you gotta listen, searching for the main thing that you're supposed to be hearing, right? There's ho'olohe and ho'olono. There's a reason why ho'olono is used for mele, and you don't ho'olohe a mele, you ho'olono, right? Because you listen with your whole body, your whole being, to feel it, to truly understand it, and to connect to it. Same thing with all of these stories. And so really the encouragement to everybody here, everybody listening, and all of our ohana is, you know, what are those mo'olelo that you tether to? What are the mo'olelo that you're creating right now? And then how do you share it in a way where it leaves behind the legacy that you really want to leave behind, right? Miki'ala gave beautiful examples of that kia manu and the legacy that her ohana left, with that and continues to leave in these generations to come, right? And so how are we making sure to continue to uplift those mo'olelo and breathing in the right sort of ha into those mo'olelo, no ka pono ka nui, but no ka pono no kākou ke kahia, for each of ourselves, for the betterment of everyone and in a way that is most fitting for the situation. But yeah, like we could go all night, and we have our people on the side saying, you guys want to tell some more mo'olelo? And so I'm going to check in with my hoa and see if she wants to share one last one. Otherwise, we can open up for some Nino if anybody's interested.
Wow, just one quick thing I like plug in. So to all our friends out there, I became friends with Kaʻanohi only recently because during pandemic, we was brave enough for go try sign up for get one master's degree in education, and we went back to school, and that was like a really daunting I don't know, it's crazy, but it was an accelerated program under the College of Education. It's only 13 months long, slam out one master's kit in curriculum development. But one of the things that drew, I think, both of us to that program was, it was a STEM squared, which means STEM with something called sense of place. And that component was, how do you take all of this education stuff and make them pili to where you stay and your mo'olelo? How do you weave mo'olelo and makavalu and all of these like things that we normally do as Kanaka all the time, but how do you bring it into the education context? And we realized that as storytellers, like she and I are both in education, like we use mo'olelo for teach all the time. It's so natural. And so we jumped into this program and so excited. And then we find out that plenty other people didn't have that, that natural ability. And so we were able to share a lot of our own sense of place and our aloha aina. And even just our identities as wahine, as mamas, and as part of mo'okuʻauhau, how does all of that really empower our keiki in the education space? Like, how is all of this relevant? And how do you build the context for them to learn anything, math, science, anything, right? If you start off with this as the foundation, start with the mo'olelo, and then everything else just connects naturally because your brain already flowing with one storyline. And so we do that all the time. And then it was just exciting that, I mean, people was asking like what we did. How have you used mo'olelo during pandemic? Oh, girl, we're gonna go get our masters with our mo'olelo. So hallelujah. Right on, girl. Congratulations. And to all of our ho'opapa.
Yeah, it was definitely a rocky ride. The kaiko'o was true, but totally worth it if for nothing else to be able to sit in space again with people and hear mo'olelo and continue to add to my umeke and to those things that really matter. And out of it, I have a very dear friend that is going to be my hoa for life into the next realm, and realizing all of these connections we had halfway through our lives, we come to that realization, right? One of the biggest things that was an eye-opener for me, that reminded me of what Mikiʻala said, right? Of the mo'olelo being foundation and making sure that we lead with that we live with that we teach and learn with that, is in writing my thesis. The feedback I got was, there's something about it that I can't put my finger on. I don't know what it is, but it's the flow of how you're writing. And he said, well, I don't know. I'm just writing my mana'o. I'm telling the mo'olelo. And then the feedback came back and it was like, I got it. It sounds like it sounds like a mele. It sounds like an oli. The ka'ina and the repetition and the way that you're weaving it together, it sounds like a mele. And I said, oh, perfect. That's exactly what it needs to sound like, right? Because that's what I ma'a to. That's the way I tell stories. That's the way that I live story. There was a moment in there where the question came up, oh, but I don't know if everyone else will understand it that way. And I said, well, if not, then it's not for them to understand, right? It's for those who are really meant to be hearing this mele right now. And so definitely, how do you stand true in your mo'olelo, right? And really have that sense of conviction to be able to carry it forward, and allow yourself to be open to the possibilities of shifting and changing and adding to and taking away, but really trusting in the identity that your kupuna have passed on to you and what you've built and what you continue to pass on, as wahine, as ohana, as Hawaii, as kanaka of this world, of this earth, of this honua, right? And how do we make sure that those mo'olelo are the foundations for everything that we do, so we can really build relationships with one another and with our spaces that matter, and that our keiki will want to now sit at our feet to listen and continue to pass on. And these beautiful mo'opuna that Mikiʻala has in her life will continue to do the same. Yeah. So mahalo nui a oi e ke hoa, mahalo e kahui o ʻaha wahine Kūhinapapa, and mahalo ya oko pakahia pau for allowing us to share just a little bit of our mo'olelo. We hope to be able
I
to
cannot. So we getting messages. Everybody's like, hurry up and tell us on mo'olelo then. So I'm gonna since I didn't actually tell like on mo'olelo, I'm gonna. Is it okay? Can I? I see Kim popping up. Okay.
Please tell us a mo'olelo, please, please, please.
So I'm going to share this mo'olelo because it's my favorite. And this is one that was told by my grandma. And it's about a special place. Well, anyway, so way back when, there was a young man, his name was Naula, and he lived in Kalama-Macomber, and he was a runner. And he lived with his mom. It was just the two of them. And she was a famous lei maker. In that time, there was this iwa fern that only grew in Kalama-Macomber. And you might know the chant, the hula, the Molokai ku'i. It was, ia Molokai ku'u iwa, ike kula vale o Kalama-Macomber. There at Kalama-Macomber, the only place where my iwa fern grows. And it's a poetic reference. This in that song, a man is trying to get to Kalama-Macomber where his sweetheart lives. But that just kind of tells us, it tells us that in that era, this iwa fern only grew in Kalama-Macomber. So if someone had a lei iwa, they knew that you had visited Kalama-Macomber. So much like, I don't know, you come back with manju or what is that? Two Ladies Kitchen strawberry mochi, then you know you was in Big Island Candies, you know, he was in Hilo. Molokai bread, yeah? Like, you know, you came to Molokai. So this lei iwa was a signature of Kalama-Macomber back then. So anyways, Naula is the champion runner for his district, and he's going to join the makahiki competitions up at Kipu on the top side of Molokai. And so in preparation, him and some of his friends decided to go scope out the grounds, because during that particular festivities, it lasted 2 anahulu, almost 3 weeks in this area, and there was all kinds of things going on. So they went to go scope out their campsite and the course where the championship was going to be held for the runners. And while they're doing all that, his friends are like, "No, come, we go down by Mimo to this gulch." And he's like, "Why are we going over there?" He's like, "Just come." So they all sneaking up, you know, creeping up by the edge of the gulch, and they're looking down. And he's like, "What are we doing?" They're like, "Chicks." And he's like, "What?" So down on the bottom are the platforms where all the ceremonial hula takes place. Up on the top, there's a performance pa, and then there's all these seats on the side, like a natural amphitheater. Had the moko ring, hakoko ring. There's like all these like arenas to do different things. So anyways, they're at Mimo and looking at it. He's like, "What are we doing?" They're pointing because all the olapa, all the wahine were down there dressing the pa and getting ready for the festivities. And he's like, "Oh my goodness, you guys," right? Rolling his eyes at his friends. But then he looks down and he locks gaze with one of the dancers. And he was smitten. And he was like, oh, who is that? And, and then all his friends was punking him out, right? So, never mind. So he goes back home and is getting his things ready for his longer stay. And the mom she's not going to join him. She has to stay home and take care of things. But so while they're getting his ukana ready, he's like, Mom, you think you can make me one late iwa? She's like, why I gonna make you one late? Every time I make you one late, like wear them. No, Mom, not for me. It's for my friend. I say, your friend? What's your friend's name? Oh, I'm not too sure. Where your friend from? I'm not too sure about that either. Oh, where you met this friend then that you don't know anything about? He's like, well, never really meet my friend yet, but if you make me one later, maybe I get chance. And our mom is like, oh, well, we see. And so the time went on and they're getting ready to pack up. And so he's watching all the ukana, like the mom is wrapping all these bundles, looking, and he doesn't see the lei. And so she's like, this is makana for your Uncle Rem. And he's like, oh, what is that? That's your extra model. Like, she's like, like, no worry, that's all your food, that's your stuff. So he doesn't see the lei. So wraps up his ukana and departs. So they get up there. My grandma's version, she kind of skipped over this part, but this is where I take my own liberty is to add, like, in my mind, he the champion. I imagine I get like chariots of fire, I get some like really pumping like music in the background. I just imagine this beautiful young man running his race. He is the champion. And he at the end of the race, all these people come to congratulate him, and amongst them is this girl. And he recognizes her. That's the one from the other day. And she's coming towards him. And if you thought his heart was pounding fast from the race, it was pounding even more. And she's coming closer and he's freaking out. He's thinking, I should have make something for her. And so, but his uncle them also show up. So he's handing out these makana. And then he realized in his bundle that his mom did. She went, make this lei. And she went, tuck him in there. And so he's feeling all kind of real love for his mama because she went pull true for him. And so he pulls out this lei, walks up to this girl, and now she's kind of freaking out because she just came for like, check him out, but now he's coming to her with a lei. And so he's gonna put this lei on her head, and she's like feeling all kind of real. And this Molokai, so everybody's already talking, who's this girl? How come she's got a lei? Who's her parents? Where's she from? Right? We still love that today. Anyway, so girls feeling real. They're trying to introduce themselves, and I'm Naula. And she's like, oh, I know, everybody know you now because and, so it's like, can we, I wouldn't mind spending time with you. And she's like, Kalamai, I gotta go. I'm breaking all kind couple right now. I have to get back before I'm noticed, I'm missing. But yes. And so he ends up asking her ohana, her mother and father, if he could accompany her. So when all her kuleana is done, he would go to her camp and meet her, and they would walk around. And at this festivities for Makahiki, all of our halau on Molokai, they would have their ho'ike and their uniki. So any elevation, we had demonstrations, we had people just having these really great conversations. I mean, all the astronomers were talking about the observations for the last year, what was happening. We're talking about different potency of plants and like just adding on to all the mo'oku ahau. This is when we all updated our database. So it's like the conference, like WIPSI, this is CNHA, this is Merrimana, this is Olympics, this is everything all smushed into one. Okay. So all these people are enjoying this time, and these two people spent time getting to know one another and having these really great conversations and falling in love along the way. So this girl, she's wearing this lei iwa. She don't like take them off. She go sleep, she get up, she holo all day, every day. But we all get sentimental about certain things. Yeah. She was the same way. She never like take this lei off, and she was getting all shriveled up, bust up, po, everything, but no more mirror. So she don't know that, her lei look all bust up. And so finally, time to part ways, yeah. And they're saying their goodbyes at the cliff, and Amakani knocks this lei off and goes tumbling down. And she goes, oh no, she goes to cheese after it. And Naula stops her and he says, no worry, I will bring you a new one. And she said, really? He says, yes, meet me here next year. And I will have a fresh lei for you. And if you are still in love with me as much as I am in love with you, I would love for you to come and live with me as my wahine in Kalaupapa. But give me 1 year to plant all the crops, to build a hale, and to furnish it with the finest things that I can make so that I can take care of you properly the way you deserve. You deserve the best. And I want to make sure I do right by you. I'm not quite ready, but if you give me this time, I promise. And so, but if while, this time goes by, if next year, you falling in love with someone else, then I'll understand. And so she says, okay. And so a year goes by, yeah. And when Naula comes up the cliff holding this lei iwa for her, there's Lehua standing at the top of the pali. And behind her, as far as the eye can see, is iwa fern just growing all over the place. And it's because this lei that she had on, as it was drying out, the spores were being scattered all over the grounds. And so that whole area now, this iwa fern that used to only grow in Kalaupapa, covered the lands of Kipu and Kalai. And now we call that area Na'iwa. Na'iwa for the fern and not for the bird. And Na'iwa is our traditional makahiki grounds. Even till today, we still gather and still host makahiki events on that same grounds. And every time we go up, we always look for the small patches. There's a few iwa fern hanging on in the deer bombarded and Christmas berry infested grounds up there. But that little, holding on to that little glimmer of hope when we see the iwa fern. And so that's my favorite story. Na'iwa is I took care of that place because my grandma was the caretaker and the kahu. She was the ha'i mo'olelo for years, and that's a kuleana I inherited. But that's where I met my husband, my sweetheart, and that's where we were married. And our youngest son together is named Na'iwa. And so this is how we keep our mo'olelo in just on our lips all the time, is by ho'ohanohano, the mahalo of our kupuna, and all of this wisdom. And so all of you girls out there, yeah, you tell your kane, naula up, can make sure they malama you the way you deserve. Whoever your partner is, whether it's in business, whether it's in, we all deserve respect and aloha. And don't lower our standards, because the right partner, whether it's a business partner, an education partner, whether the right job, yes, no, that's the saying, naula up. Okay, we even get hats, like my kids are like, that's the code word for, hey, you better get your act together, okay, before you think you're stepping and taking on a kuleana. You better be makau. So whether you're going on a trip, you're gonna do something, yeah, be ready for whatever the next adventure holds. Mahalo for letting us share our mo'olelo and for this platform.
Aloha. The best. Mahalo nui, Mikiʻala, for that mo'olelo. And in fact, mahalo both to both our presenters, Mikiʻala and Kaʻanohiokalā, because what we learned from you overall is keep the mo'olelo alive. And not everybody is a storyteller, but if you are a storyteller or if you're a story holder, then you've got to keep them alive and transmit them, share them, tell them, even if it's just within your own ohana. So mahalo nui. To both of you, Ka'iu, do you have any closing comments for these two?
That was so much fun. Thank you guys so
exciting.
I could listen to you guys for on and on and on. But they did get married and live happily ever after, right? There was the end to that, right? But I truly believe in stories too, and you folks are such gifted storytellers. As a hula dancer and as a mom and grandma, I just want them to throw away their phones and all these computer things and technical things that they're on all the time, and listen to stories and get out and experience things. That's why our day was so valuable with you, Mickey. The other thing that I've been thinking about is, you know, even in work, we're always measuring things by numbers and sizes and big amounts, and we keep pushing to tell stories as our measures of evaluation, and I think that's what they did, you know. And so there was so much to learn in the stories and the way that you told things. There were just all kinds of lessons inside there, and I really believe that that's really how we should be teaching and raising our kids. So mahalo nui to both of you.
Mahalo nui to both of you. We're so grateful. We do have a program, mahalo to Kaʻanohi, mahalo to Mikiʻala, for this very first episode of the new ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa series. We've got a real exciting season with more storytelling and more sharing and more learnings coming up. And I think we have the slide that shows what's coming up on March 24th, which, okay, let's thank our sponsors. We couldn't be doing this without Hawaii People's Fund, without the support of a Kolumea Nui. ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa is not a nonprofit, and yet we're able to bring you some pretty amazing storytelling, such as we did tonight. And that's with the support of a Kolumea Nui. Our other sponsors include Papaʻola Lokahi, Windward Community College, Roots Program at Kokua-Kalihi Valley, and Maili Kukahi Aina Momona Academy. Mahalo nui to you all. March 24th, is it March 24th? We have art classes. Cut you?
Yes, we're going to be fortunate to have another presenter from Molokai, Mailina Ehu, and Eola Mau Koinoa, May Your Name Live On. And so it's kind of an immersive painting, storytelling, learning about names and why and how and all of the things that go into naming. And so it's there. When you register, it's a real simple list of art supplies. We wanted to make sure that it was accessible to whoever wanted to participate. I think it's like pencil, eraser, a sheet of paper. If it can be watercolor paper, great. If not, it's just a sheet of paper and some watercolors and brushes. And this is something that you can do with the kids, you can do with the family, but she's going to talk a little bit, give you some instructions on art while telling story and giving some cultural perspective to naming. And so we're really looking forward to that. That'll be on the last Thursday of the month. In fact, all of our webinars will be on the last Thursday of every month through December. And we have a really good lineup that we're so excited to share with everybody. So hope that you can make it.
Mahalo nui for joining us tonight. We'll see you next month. Aloha nui kako, malama pono, malama kekahi, kekahi. Take care of one another. On behalf of ʻAha Wahine, here's how we can be reached anytime. Find out what's new. Mahalo nui and aloha.
Sister, I know you got to go outside. I know you got to go outside. We're going to go in a minute, okay? You be good, girl. You be good, girl. Is it just the panelists and hosts left on?
Facebook is still live.
Yes. Can we stop recording?